Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of ShirleyTalk. I'm Mike Mulrooney, and Kelly is not with us right now. She had a baby the other day, and I don't know when this will air, but she'll probably still be on leave. If we can get her out of the house every now and then, we will, but we want her to be with her family, so it's pretty amazing. And first of all, we are not professionals of anything. We're not tax accountants. We're not attorneys. We're not doctors. So if you hear us say something, please get professional advice. And while we're talking about professionals, Mr. Joe Bohannon at A+ Screen Printing, they can do everything. I had no idea they could print and etch the big cups like Terry's got here. So they can do etching on those cups. I'm going to call Joe later and order some cups with our logos on them. They actually etch them. They don't print them. They print all of our T-shirts, hats, hoodies, sweatshirts, everything. So if you need screen printing, please get a hold of A+ Screen Printing, Mr. Joe Bohannon. So some of you probably know our guest if you're watching the video, Mr. Terry Hall. How you doing, Terry?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I see you got your logo out there.
Oh, yeah. All about the branding.
It's all about branding, isn't it? We've
Absolutely.
talked about that before. Terry used to be on the board of Shirley's Way and branched off after the horrible car crash that affected his family. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit because some changes have come about. But you posted something on LinkedIn the other day, and I don't think a lot of people know your story of your dad and things like that. And I saw that and I thought, you're an inspiring story, and I thought it might help people learn that just because you grew up in tough times doesn't mean you have to stay in that environment. So, do you remember the post on LinkedIn that day?
I do. And normally on LinkedIn, I don't get too personal. It's more professional. But I just kind of felt, with reflecting on where I was in my professional career. And at 33, it's kind of weird to say that, but really proud of where I am. And a lot of people do not know that story, and was kind of using it as inspiration to go, hey, I remember looking at myself as a senior in high school wondering what do we make of this life? And, just 15 years later,
but most people, I know, it's amazing. That's why I said this would be such an inspirational story, because I don't think you were abused or anything, but your dad went down a path that you didn't choose. So what was it that he did? Yeah.
So from birth, my dad was he grew up in that era of partying and never got out of it. So my mom, I'm the third of four children. My brother and sister are 9 and 10 years older than me. So I was an accident. And my dad was still big into partying. And so even when I was born, my dad had a heavy drug addiction. He was a roofer by trade, which is why my brother does that. But, some of the contractors live that rough. They work hard and they play hard life.
They do. I was watching something the other day, and I forget what it was, but his comment was, these people work hard. They're physically tired, and they probably all go home and drink or smoke a little weed every now and then. So, a lot of, and I don't want to categorize, but their bodies are hurting. So, that may have been the reason why he started that stuff outside of the partying, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And so being born into that environment wasn't the greatest, I guess, life, right? So at an early age, I moved into my grandmother's house, which is my mom's mom, just because my mom and dad were constantly on and off again. My mom, which is where I think I get my giving heart, she always tried to fix my dad and never could. But their relationship was on again, off again. So I kind of bounced around, living with my mom a little bit, and then moving back in with my grandma. And my grandma is where my brother and sister were living too, until they became, adults. So, my dad's drug addiction and his want to party was kind of not a great environment to raise a child in. So I moved into who I called my nanny, which was my second mother. I moved into her house as a young child and lived with her. And even through there, tragedy started early. We lost cousins that were murdered. We had family members that were in and out of prison. We lived off food stamps. My dad helped when he could, but a lot of his money went towards his addictions. And my mom had always been a solid, figure in my life, but her ability to want to help kind of got in her way of being able to just be the independent woman that she wanted to be, and no fault to her own. But she made a very mature decision in letting me live with my grandmother because it was the best environment.
She asked you if you wanted to live there, or she just said, we're going to have you come over here for a little while?
Well, I don't know exactly how that played out because I was so young. I mean, I was 3 or 4,
Oh,
maybe
okay.
even a little
Wow.
older. But I just think between my grandmother and her and probably her sisters, like they just decided that this is a safer environment at the time. And I spent plenty of time with my mom. It's not like she wasn't involved. And our relationship as I got older got significantly better. Like we're super close now. Um, but yeah, so as I was growing up, I was kind of exposed to a lot of tragedy, a lot of difficult times. But one thing that never lacked was like that love that I had from my grandmother and my mother and my family and my siblings and my aunts. And right before 6th grade, I was 11 years old and my father passed. Technically, it was a seizure that killed him, but drugs are what drove that to happen. And the story of that night is, I mean, it gives me chills when I think about it. So the night before my father passed, it was a Friday. I came, well, he didn't pass on the Saturday, but he went into the hospital. I went over to my mom and his house, spent the weekends with him when I could, and just walked in. My mom brought us home. My little sister was there, and my dad had his door locked. And oftentimes, if his door was locked, it means he was probably doing something he shouldn't.
Yeah.
And spent hours in there just locked in. And mom, was watching TV with me, and she dozed off, and my sister was asleep. And when my dad's door opened, it was kind of like, okay, you can talk to dad now. And I walked back there with dad. He was kind of coming down from his high, and just something felt different. He was really kind of like lovey-dovey, which he wasn't that often. And he was just, saying, take care of your sister if anything were to ever happen to us, and explaining, being pretty candid with 11-year-old about what he was doing, his drug. And then we ran out. He took, just incredibly not smart, but we went for a drive. And then the next day, he was trying to get us all to go out and do things like, my cousin took us to it was the Louisville Redbirds at the time, to the Redbirds game. Dad gave me money, kissed me on the head, said he loved me. And he was trying to get my mom to leave, to go to bingo. She wouldn't. She didn't want to go anywhere. And then he locked himself in the room again. And then ultimately had a seizure that was driven by the drug use. So it's almost, we talk about it, but it's almost like he had given up and knew what he was doing, which doesn't change what happened. But as an 11-year-old, to experience that was difficult. He was in the ICU for 3 days and then ultimately passed.
Wow. What kind of drugs did he do?
You'd probably name any, and we could probably
Really?
say yes.
I didn't know if they had a drug of choice or something like that.
I think, obviously started with alcohol and then weed, and then he just progressively worked his way up. I know he did cocaine and then crack, and I mean, probably anything it just progressively got worse.
But seeing that at an early age, did you go down that path for a while, or did you try to? I mean, did you see it and think I'm not going down that path, or did you tempt it a little bit?
Yeah. So when he passed, when I was 11, I made a promise to myself that won't be me. I won't do that. And then my nanny actually passed the next year from cancer, and I was living with her. So basically, when my dad died at 11, my grandma died at 12. That year, I pretty much was a homebody. I went to school and then came home and helped take care of my grandma, and then she passed. And then I moved in with my brother, who at the time was 21 and had a 1 and a 3-year-old. And then a year later, he got a divorce. So then I moved out and moved in with my mom, and who she had remarried Mark by then. So 6th grade lived with nanny, 7th grade lived with brother, 8th grade lived with mom. And from 8th grade on, some stability took place. Mom and Mark were very present in my life. And after 6th grade, I was kind of a jerk in school because there were so many things going on in my life, and I didn't know how to handle it. But from 7th grade forward, I made like all A's, even through high school. I just something clicked that like I wanted more, and being in trouble, it was more work to be in trouble than to not be in trouble.
It really is.
So I just kind of straightened it up and just learned one big thing, and I always say it, and I say it to my kids and anyone that asks for advice. You could either use what you've seen in life as an excuse, meaning, like, oh, there's drug addiction in my family. I'm a drug addict, so it's what's expected of me. It's in my blood. Or you can say, I learned from those that made mistakes before me of what not to do. So at 11, I didn't learn a ton of things from my dad of what to do, but I learned a heck of a lot of things what not to do.
Oh yeah.
So it would be in vain if I let his death at 40 be a waste. So I think as a man here sitting at 33, I learned a ton from my dad, and he probably had no clue that he was teaching me these lessons. And even after his death, I've learned from him.
Well, you
So,
probably didn't realize it either. You're watching, why does dad do this all the time? Why is he not around? Why is he always in there in the bedroom with the door locked and not spending time with us? And, I guess you're lucky that you had some place to go. There's so many other kids in that situation that don't have any place to go. So they end up on the streets and doing the same exact thing.
absolutely. And one thing I left out of the story is, so when I moved in with my nanny, my cousin Dustin lived with us, and his mother was the one that was murdered that I referred to earlier. And he didn't know who his father was. And now Dustin lives a really, really rough life. A lot of kids in and out of drug addiction. And that's not knocking him at all, but it's just the reality of the situation is, some of his circumstances led him down that road, and mine led me down the other road. And it's really, I am a very religious guy, but I sometimes just wonder why did I go left and he went right? We both were at that fork in the road in our lives, and we were dealt with a lot of similar cards. But I think one key thing, I did have my mother and some stability there. And then when Mark came along, although he had his vices too,
He was stable.
he financially
There, yeah.
allowed us to have a roof over our heads and some consistency, and knowing that, when we came home, we weren't worried about water and electric. We had that. So that is a huge reason why. And then I had my brother. He was forced to be a man at an early age because he had a child when he was in high school. And he was a solid force. And my Uncle Kevin, who was an alcoholic who recently passed, but he was very hard on me. But looking back on it, he was hard on me because he saw something in me. So I had a lot of male people around me that were pretty solid. And I ultimately think that's really what kind of helped steer the ship. And then I had aunts that were really strong influences on me too.
I got a lot of women keeping me in line, I tell you. But it's an incredible story. Like I said, so many people go down the wrong path. Your dad, did his parents delve in alcohol and drugs and any type of addiction? I just wonder why he started something like that.
Yeah, his dad, my grandpa Ed, had a drinking problem. Doesn't anymore, but he did at a younger age.
He's still alive?
Yeah, he's alive, and is very close with me. And they had a broken home. They had 4 siblings, and then grandpa separated and remarried, and the boys went with grandpa, and the girls went with grandma, and some, split home. But I just think the big thing was just the environment he was brought up in. It was a party era, and some people never get out of it. And I just don't think he got out of it, because it wasn't that he was abused. Grandpa was hard on him, but it wasn't that the abuse led him down that road.
It was a different kind of heavy-handed love versus abuse back in the day. Because and my dad was the same way, but he only got me once, and I remember, and that's all I needed. I wasn't going to do it again.
Yeah. So I just think, his brother was a partier, like it's just the environment. Some people mature and get away from it, and some people don't, and it just got him.
Well, we're glad you went down the opposite path. So you graduated from high school. What was your plans in college? You're an accountant, right?
I have an accounting degree. I'm in finance and trade.
I don't know the difference between finance and accounting, so I just, it's all numbers to me. So, but you went down that path. Is that something that you just always had wanted to do, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, so back to those male influences in my life. So in high school, Mark, my stepdad, got me into playing golf, which led to me playing golf for PRP and meeting Coach Jason White. Mm-hmm. Jason White was, and still is, a really good friend of mine, but he was there to hold me accountable for what I did. I fell in love with the game of golf, and he was the business teacher. So he was my first introduction into accounting. So, whether or not I was interested in it or not, that's Coach White teaching the class, so you better pay attention. And I'd always been big into numbers, and just sitting in his class, things just came easy. A lot of people struggled with introduction to accounting in high school.
I wasn't good at it.
But it just made sense. The numbers just clicked. And I always remember my mom keeping, the checkbook. every day she'd have a thing itemized, and I'd see her doing it, and she's the coupon queen. And so that part of my mom, and then the business side of my dad, because he did have his own business when he was alive, doing the roofing stuff. But Coach White was just a solid for me throughout high school. I'd spend time with him on the weekends. I'd watch his house, and by loving the game of golf and having him as a coach, we were just really close. And he was my introduction to accounting. So then I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do in college, because that's the only thing I knew. I didn't know I definitely didn't want to be in roofing. My brother was like, don't kill your back on this. Don't go down this road unless you have to. And then I was a valedictorian in high school. I made all A's, and so I was into the books, but I was always also into real world. And that's just the choice I made. I had a big growth spurt in high school between junior and senior year. It grew about 6 inches, and it completely changed my golf swing. So I was trying to go to college for golf, but with that big growth spurt, my whole swing changed, and I really didn't figure it out until right as I was graduating. So I didn't get any full rides. I was never quite good enough.
Yeah.
So I had to use my brain in college. So I went to U of L for accounting, and did that. I worked the UPS deal at night, went to school during the day, and started dating my girlfriend at the time right before college, which is now my wife. So, I had a heavy load. I didn't have that traditional college experience, which was probably good for me because I did have a little wild side through college. But yeah, I just college wasn't my thing. I love when people say just school isn't my thing. Like, I don't know many people it is. Like, who wants to say?
Wasn't mine either, but I knew I wanted something different in life, and if I wanted something different, I needed to suck it up and finish school.
Yep, absolutely. And my brother was a big motivator in that, and my family. And
I love back up just a minute. I love the debate over sports. So you've had an interesting childhood. Your dad passed away from drug use. So at that point, the only male figure technically was probably Michael, your brother. So you come across a coach. So I love the debate over sports, because people get hung up on sports and saying, oh, sports is ridiculous, we shouldn't have sports. You met a male figure that changed your life. It wasn't, you wanted to play golf, but he actually had an impact on you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And like I said before, to this day, we're still friends. And my golf scramble every year, he's on my team, and I was watching him raise his kids too, because he had young kids while I was in high school. So, I got to see what a normal structured family worked like with him and his wife, Pam. And Pam was good to me as well. So, I think that's probably part of it, is that, I saw what a family was supposed to look like through him and his kids. And
but as a sports figure.
Yeah.
That's right.
If he was just Mr. White, the accounting teacher, I wouldn't have had that.
Yeah, my point is, sports is much more than a win and a loss. It's having a coach that cares about you. Mm-hmm. I grew up playing basketball for Coach Randy Waddell, and he's a legend in our school. But he had an impact on my life, him and teachers and stuff like that. So my point is, coaches can impact a child's life more than just teaching them the game. They can have an impact on their life in general. So
absolutely. And it's not even just the coaching, it's the team aspect of a sport, because most of your life you're brought up as you, as an individual, and then you get thrown into a team dynamic, because I played AAU basketball as well. And it's not just about you. Like, you can't be one person and win in a team sport. And so you learn that camaraderie, the teamwork, that you have to show up for practice, and you have to show up for games, and you have to make a commitment. Like,
be there for somebody else.
Absolutely. And it's just like work, right? You're part of a team, and you have to show up and do your job. And, if you just want to show up and just do the bare minimum, you're going to be as good as you're going to be. But if you show up and really put the work in, and you become better. And Coach White was big on that too. He was hard on me. I wasn't the most talented kid, and I was really small when he got me as a freshman, but he knew every day when I showed up, he knew what he was going to get out of me. And it wasn't going to be a lack of effort, and it wasn't going to be a bad attitude. I was going to work. And that's kind of the attitude I've always had. And I think that's a big part too of why I've been successful, is because I don't think I'm great at anything, but I think I'm really good at a lot of things. And I'm trying to get great at everything, and I don't know that I ever will be, but it's not from lack of effort.
Yeah, I say the same thing. I was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah, I'm willing to try and figure something out and do the right thing. So, so you've got out. You're in college. You've got your accounting degree. You got married. You got a job. You got a family. And then there was this horrible, horrible car crash, and it was not an accident. It was a car crash
Mhm.
that took some loved ones for you. And then off comes the Leslie and Ryan Prather Foundation.
Yeah, so I got married in 2012, and I'd been dating what became my wife for about 6 years on and off. Um, and marrying into her family is something, I told you all the brokenness on my side. Well, when you marry into hers, there was a lot of stability there. They were tight knit. She had two sisters.
Getting together on the holidays and
Not even holidays, just a
All the
Monday to go to
time.
Mark's feed store
Yeah.
because they wanted to be with each other, not because it was what you're supposed to do. But her two sisters, from the moment I started dating Stacy, felt like my blood, and they treated me no different than that either. And then both of them ended up getting married, and their husbands are best friends of mine, Justin and Sash. And as they had kids, I was, other than Brennan, the oldest, I was around for every child that was born, and at the hospital. And so they are my nieces and nephews, and Brennan is too, but I just wasn't there at the birth. But Leslie was one of my best friends, and she was my sister. We weren't blood sister and brother, but she was my sister. And then Ryan, at the hospital when she was born, and then I was her first boyfriend. She declared that, and when I proposed to my wife, she was mad at me. Like I think she was 2 or 3 years old, and just was mad at me because I'm getting married and
cheating on her.
Yeah, basically. So I still hold that title of being her first boyfriend, and I hold that with pride.
Yeah.
But yeah, so started the foundation. Well, I'll take a step back. I was on your board when all of this happened. I had volunteered for 3 years with you, and then 3 years on your board. And it was just by chance that I even met you because you had just started Shirley's Way, and you just showed up at a golf scramble that my brother and I was putting on for a 20-year-old who passed from cancer. You showed up, and I think you probably had $500 in your account, and you gave it to us.
Not all we had.
Yeah. And so you gave it to us for that family. And Michael and I never forgot that. And from there, that's when I started being a little more involved with what Shirley's Way was doing. And then, 3 years on the board and watching that grow through Queen of Hearts and just new sponsors coming on board, new lives being changed. Was learning a ton watching Shirley's Way grow and being a part of that. And then the wreck happens. And I mean, it's as much tragedy as I'd been through in my life. Nothing prepares you for that. And it wasn't just Leslie and Ryan. It was two other, another mother and daughter, the McCaws. And your life just flipped upside down because my brother-in-law says it perfect. You go to bed the day before it thinking, life's good. Everything's going the way it's planned. And then it's not.
You never see them again.
Right. And she was Superwoman. She had just turned 40 a week or two before we were celebrating her 40th birthday. And she was a mother of 4. After her 4th and youngest child went into school, she decided to become a firefighter. She was a collegiate volleyball player. She was a volleyball coach for college in Kiva. She was like the perfect woman. You do not get any better than Leslie Drury Prather. And then Ryan was her mini-me, cut from the same cloth. If I walked into a family event, my kids, I didn't see them because Ryan had them and was mama bear and loving on them, and was just an amazing young girl. And she was 12 when it happened. And so when we got the call on Valentine's Day that it happened, it just didn't feel real. And we immediately rushed out to be with Justin and the family. And I'll never forget that scene of just being surrounded by the family, just literally sitting in a circle, just telling stories and loving on each other, and
and wondering what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some of this stuff before, and to wrap your head around that they're never coming back is absolutely horrible.
Well, and even on the day of, it doesn't feel real. Like it's you don't accept the fact that they're gone. And then one thing that I've learned on this side of it with the foundation, and I'm sure you learn every day, is that there's no playbook on how to deal with these things. Like tragedy comes in various different forms, and when you're in it, you don't know what to do. And that's one thing our foundation has getting good at, unfortunately, is when I get a phone call that a family's facing tragedy, and they call me directly. I don't want to volunteer taking that phone call, taking notes, giving me the note, and then I give a note back, and just impersonal with what we're doing. And we didn't have a playbook on that day when it happened. And we had the community rallied around us. The fire department came out. some of her coworkers at her firehouse was there. Major Bobby Cooper was out there. Justin's family was there. Our family was there. And then pastor at Southeast, Kyle Eidelman, came out and literally spoke to our family and got on the floor with us and cried with us. And, they catch a lot of grief because of how big the church is. But from that moment, when Kyle doing what he did with us, like, he won me over as a person, not a pastor or priest, whatever. As a man, he won us over because he sat there and cried with us and prayed with us and didn't pretend like we should know that everything's going to be perfect and that, although we're Christians and we believe they went to heaven and they're in a better place, like, we don't have to believe that the plan is what it is in that moment and accept it for what it was. Like, we're hurting, we're grieving. So he came and spoke to us, and then the next day woke up and reality sinks in that it's real. And that's when I wrote a song with Josh Logan about it, just as, and the name of the song is It Doesn't Feel Real. And it still doesn't to this day. But that morning, and I'm not an emotional guy as far as like me personally crying, but I just sobbed the next morning because that's when reality hit in. It's not a dream. It's real. So we dealt with the days to come, since it was a wreck in Missouri. They were at the corner up there, and we didn't get the bodies back for a while. And then when they did, there was a procession, and people honored every overpass that they passed from Missouri to Louisville. There was a first responder at the overpass paying respects. And I was able to meet the procession in Georgetown, Indiana with the family, and we rode through town to the funeral home. And the reason I'm giving all these details is just because so many people in our community and communities that didn't even know us were there to just be there for us, to show love. And that community is what got our family through the first days and the first weeks and the first months and now the first couple years. So then around July, I think, which about 5 months after the wreck, Justin and I and the family were at the lake on the houseboat. And I'd been kind of noodling on the idea of doing a foundation for them because selfishly, I didn't want their name or their memories to ever fade. And I know how these things work, right? Everyone's there for you when it happens. And then over time, life happens and that communication fades away. And I didn't want that to happen for them because they were that big to me and to everyone else that they deserve to have their legacies live on because that's how great they were. And so I mentioned the idea to Justin, and Justin said, let's do it. Obviously, he's like, I can't. I'm just way too. It's not the time for me. But if you want to take this on, you can. And I started assembling a board of people that knew Leslie and Ryan and had particular talents, and we knew that we had a reach in different groups, right? So the volleyball world was heavily impacted because they were going to a volleyball tournament, and Leslie grew up in volleyball, and Justin played soccer at U of L, and Ryan played soccer at Fall City. And then the firefighter family, and then our family, and then friends. So we had all these extensions that we needed to bring in to make this successful, and that's what we did with the board. My vice president is Captain Clarence Gamble with the fire department. One of the firefighters that worked with her at Engine 22, Nick Eschenbach, is on my board. Jeff Bauer is a coach at Fall City Soccer and coached Ryan. Courtney Robeson-Dixon is the head of operations at Kiva Volleyball and was her coach. And then we have Maggie Peak, who is a friend, a neighborhood friend, and works at Brown-Forman. That's our 5 board members. And it was very important for me to have people that it mattered to. We could have went out and got a lot of professionals that had, a big Rolodex of contacts, but
their heart wouldn't have been in it.
Exactly. Yep.
All these folks you just mentioned, they've been touched by her and the family and everybody, so it makes more than sense to do that.
Yeah, it's not a business transaction when they go do something for this foundation. It's a personal thing to them, and that matters to me. And we were very careful. The family, I would have loved to have family on the board, but just to keep the nepotism and you've obviously got people donating money, so we didn't want anybody to think, hey, the family's running this, or ever question that. Obviously, the intentions are always going to be pure, but just you're building a brand and a business, so you got to think those things through. And then below the board sits our co-chairs, and I've got 9 of 10 of those positions filled with very similar people, right? We have an attorney that runs Fall Cities, and he's an estate attorney, so he doesn't know all the answers, but he's always like, let me figure it out for you.
He's connected enough to figure stuff like that out.
And if I call, he answers. We got Kentucky football starting center is a co-chair, and really what that was is he made a donation out of nowhere. And now he's potentially going to be drafted in the NFL, but he made a donation out of nowhere. And then him and I started messaging, and come to find out, his mom's a teacher. His dad works in the Section 8 housing in Ohio. They don't have much money, but they have huge hearts. And he wants to do a foundation one day when he's able. And I took him under my umbrella as a mentor and said, I want you to be our Lexington relations co-chair, so that when something happens in Lexington, I can call you and you take care of it. And so that's what he's been doing for us. Even in his busy schedule, he always takes care of it. And then we got a couple family members as co-chairs, just to keep the family involved in what we're doing, so that, if I want to pass a message to the family, I say, hey, Laura, let the family know and assemble.
And they're probably okay with that distance, because it's probably still pretty raw for a lot of them, really.
It is. And as you know, you're running a foundation for your mother. So oftentimes people will ask questions or say things to me and forget that, like, that's my sister and that's my niece, which is understandable, but it's still raw for me at times. You look at their faces 25 times a day.
Yeah, but you've been able to channel that, probably because you've been through some tragic stuff as a kid. You've been able to channel it a different way and it hits you sometimes. A song can come on for me and I'll start thinking about things and it'll hit me, but you've been able to channel it differently. So
yeah, absolutely. And I've, of all the things we've experienced, I've probably cried 3 times since the wreck, and it's just not the way I deal with things, but it's because I can compartmentalize things in the moment. And so as we got going, I mean, that was the big thing, is I felt like I could do it. And it was a challenge to me to say, you know what, this isn't about me. It isn't about Justin. It isn't about the family. It's about Leslie and Ryan. And if we build this thing to where it does what I think it can do, then we're honoring Leslie and Ryan, but also we're going to do good in the community. We're going to be there for families as they face these tragedies. But ultimately, if her kids want to run this foundation 10 years from now, and a dream of mine would be to hand it off to them.
Yeah.
And to build it to where that can be a job for them. And they can get paid to honor their mother. And that's pipe dream, right? I can't do this forever.
Yeah, you never know, but when your heart's in it, you want to stick around as long as possible.
Yeah.
So what is it that you all do? So people call you with tragedies? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, so before I dive too deep in it, we wouldn't be where we are without Shirley's Way and guys like Daryl Sweeney with Cure CF, who groomed us for this and is always there to answer questions. And so one thing I learned with Shirley's Way is that you have to be very intentional with your mission statement. And do not box yourself into something very, very confined. Mm-hmm. And we're not dealing with cancer. It wasn't a disease. It isn't an illness. It was tragedy. So our mission statement became to help women, children, and families in need. Women, clearly, Leslie; children, Ryan; families in need, Justin. Mm-hmm. But more specifically, our goal is to help families facing tragedies while spreading kindness. So not every day we get a call that someone's lost a life or they become terminally ill. But every day we can be kind and we can spread kindness, and we have kindness card for kids. They can do a kind act and hand it off, just to keep the warm-heartedness that Leslie and Ryan left behind. But yeah, so the goal is to help families facing tragedies, and the way we do it is in a 4-pillar approach. The first is wrecks. Clearly, we know why wrecks are significant to our situation. And at the beginning, that was the biggest giving that we were doing. But the second pillar, death and illness, has taken over. Because because of crowdfunding, families will reach out and say, what should we do? And you all have the ability to, and, to start the GoFundMe style platforms to help the community donate towards it. But those are huge.
Yeah, because a lot of people want to help. They just don't know how. But you and I can create a link and give their family, friends the ability to share it on social media and collect money on their behalf.
Right.
And if somebody's got a big following and that's what it takes, they can typically get some money that they need to help with whatever it is they're dealing with.
Yeah. And the same thing, we started a GoFundMe for Justin, meaning the family and his brother who's an attorney. And so we started that because the community wanted to help. People wanted to get involved, but we didn't know what to tell them. Well, people want to make donations so they feel like they were able to be there for you in your time of need. It's not about the money. It's about the act. Mm-hmm.
They want to participate and help.
Yeah, and so every penny that we raise, fortunately, Justin wasn't in a financial position where they needed, money to bury his wife and daughter, but that money now is sitting in a trust for his children, and one day we can help them through college and the community.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't touched any of that money, and that's too personal really to dive into. But just want people to know that like their donation will reap rewards and affect the family, and so whether it was $1 or 500, like that money is going to get put to good use for these children in honor of their mother and daughter or sister. But yeah, so the second pillar is the death and illness. So basically that's anything non-rec related. If a dad gets sick and mom, has to quit work to help, and this, they need help. And that's a tragedy. Your world changes with a diagnosis, like literally. So we want to be able to help there. The third is pediatric needs. Ryan was a child. Leslie was the mama bear. And we want to make sure kids have what they need when they get sick or when something life-altering happens to them. It's got to be deemed a tragedy, but we want to help kids. And so one thing we're doing now is the baby box. The fire department, the PRP fire department put one in at Terry Road. And there's one going up at a Louisville Fire Department, Engine 6. And then we'll be the third one in Louisville that the foundation is going to get out there in honor of Leslie. And if people don't know what that is basically it allows a mother or a father to literally drop their kid off at a firehouse in this baby box. And when the door shuts, it locks. It's climate controlled. It has sensors on it. It sends an alert to first responders that, hey, there's a baby at this firehouse. It can be safe in there for 12 hours, I think. It's got proper oxygen and temperatures, and it allows that mother to not do something unthinkable in their moment of issue. And it allows us to prevent a tragedy instead of having to step in after a tragedy.
I didn't know y'all were doing that, and that's pretty cool. And I've had really mixed emotions on that. And my first reaction was that's absolutely ridiculous. But what you just said nails it, because there's too many parents that freak out, have bad times, and they had one on the news not too long ago. Somebody threw their baby in a dumpster. Mm-hmm. And if you take that thought process as of, I can't believe they're doing this, and you channel that to, it's probably better for everybody if they separate safely, and that's what that does.
Yeah, and it's not our place to judge a parent for making that decision, because honestly, that's the most selfless decision they could make in that situation versus the alternative. Again, we deal with tragedies after they happen, and this gives us the ability to prevent one.
Right. What's one of those costs? Do you have any idea?
Roughly $20,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're fundraising for it, but it doesn't matter if we raise it all or not. We're doing it.
Yeah.
So
the only reason I ask is I wouldn't mind maybe doing something like that too. So we'll talk about that off.
Yeah, and it's through Safe Haven. I have the contacts for you, but it's like when you hear that a mother dropped their kid off at a firehouse, you're like, how could you? And we're parents, and we get that. But when you take a step back, we don't know what they're going through. Imagine if it was me when my dad was deep into his drug use and it wasn't abusive, but let's say their relationship was abusive and my mom were to drop me off. Well, I have a chance at a good life if I'm handed into the proper people. But if I'm just thrown in a garbage bag and chucked in a dumpster, I have no life.
Or drown in a bathtub somewhere, which happens as well. So, but no, I'm all for it. Like I said, when I first heard of it, I thought it was freaking horrific and how horrible that could be. But man, it's a blessing. It really is.
It really is.
Before we started Shirley's Way, I looked at getting onto a board of another organization here in Louisville, the Home of the Innocents, and they told me their biggest time of year is Christmas. And I'm thinking, because they have all these Christmas gifts. And it's like, no, because that's the biggest time when parents just drop their babies off at the door and leave.
Yeah.
It's heart-wrenching to think that, but it's, we got some issues in this world. So at least the babies are taken care of, hopefully. So.
Yep. And ultimately, let's create an environment where people can make safe, sane decisions. Mental health is a big thing. It's more on the forefront than it's ever been before today.
Yeah.
And it's not viewed as
a sickness.
Yeah. Well, it's not viewed as something that's bad. Like, oh, you have mental health issues, you're bad. No, it's real life. I mean, I deal with anxiety myself, and you wouldn't know it. And my wife's probably the only one that truly grasps what I go through.
Oh, we're all crazy. It's just how you handle it.
Yeah, that's what keeps you from going insane, right?
That's right.
But that's an opportunity that when I saw the news release on the one on Terry Road, I instantly messaged Captain Gamble and Eschenbach on my board because they're firefighters. And they said, Terry, we were thinking the exact same thing. And then we just got the wheels turning, and Major Bobby Cooper was receptive to it. And I'm talking to the person that runs Safe Haven, and it just happened really fast. But you know how it is when you feel passionate about something, you've got the same attitude that I do. Like, we're going to find a way to do this, and we're doing it.
Well, I think you and I are both fixers. We see something and we immediately start thinking, how can I impact that and what can I do to fix it?
Yeah.
And I'm interested in that. So we'll have to figure that out. You mentioned something about Leslie being Mama Bear. You need to create a Mama Bear fund.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would use it for, but it'd be kind of cool just to say the Mama Bear fund.
Yeah. I still got to do some other things too on the back end to protect what we got too. I need to talk to Wes about that, the website king. Yeah. It might be you. But the fourth pillar is house fires and all other. Leslie, being a firefighter, she would be the first to tell you how your life changes in that instance with a house fire. Now, a lot of people do have homeowners insurance, but let's be honest, you don't see those funds for months if you're lucky. And then you have to prove everything that you had, and it's just a mess. And we're able to get funds to families in the instance, to put them in a hotel. To give them essential things that they need in that moment.
That's huge. I've got rental properties. Years ago I had a house fire and the family didn't know what they were going to do. In this major, and I'll tell you, I don't want to throw them under the bus. I'd like to, but they were there for some reason. Don't know why. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, great, I'm glad you're here. Can you help them get a hotel room for the night? And they refused. They said, no, that's not why we're here. I'm like, why are you here? I know what kind of money this organization runs, but they wouldn't even get the person a hotel room for that night. And we paid for it. Yeah. But I just thought that's the reason why they were there, and it wasn't. But I hear the sirens go off quite a bit, firemen, and it's amazing how many fires probably happen every day and we don't know it.
Yeah. And we're so tuned in with the fire department, being that they're on our board and co-chairs, and
so they reach out.
Firefighter. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people go, how do people come to you for assistance? And it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all type approach. It's normally a friend that knows the family, sees what happens, knows of our organization, and either emails me or talks to a friend that knows us, and they reach out on their behalf. So it's not oftentimes us going to help people. If people come to us saying this is what's going on, and then we start the verification process to prevent fraud. And then in tragic moments, it's important to be able to react instantly.
It is.
So we vet the process as quick as we can, as accurately as we can, and then we start helping. And so, I always tease because people see me carrying two phones. It's not because I want to, but it's the only way to keep life balanced. And when a family calls, they're calling this personal phone. It's coming to me. And then this is the life phone, personal and work. But I want people to be able to access me. Obviously, as we grow, it's going to get more difficult. And I'm aware of that. But I want that to not be an impersonal response, and I can be the stoic guy on the other end of the phone who's not crying with you, but yet thinking, how can I help you?
Clearly. Yeah.
And
no, I get it. And you'll get to that point, and you probably are, but I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about that, and you know the story with us, but, but it's not only the amount of calls you get, it's what beats you down.
Mm-hmm.
You keep hearing these stories over and over and over, and it wears on you. But it's good. It also gives you the inside track of everything that goes on in the organization initially. So it's huge.
Yeah. And we're 18 months into this now. We've given out, our last update was $215,000 to families in need. We've raised significantly more than that because, and this is to clear up that because you know this, but when I say we've raised $430,000, people are going, but you've only given $215 back. Well, events cost money. So that goes towards that. And also we keep money in the account so that we can help people. I'm never running a net zero budget. That's not smart. I'm in budgeting as a professional. It's not smart to run a net zero budget as a nonprofit.
Yeah. I don't care what business you're running. You have to keep capital. And when we first started Shirley's Way, we didn't have any money. If somebody would give me a check for $5, I was running it to the bank to deposit it just to have something. And I always thought, how cool would it be to have some money set aside just in case somebody has an absolute emergency, or you got a home run of an idea to raise money. But people don't understand how expensive it is. Even to run a charity, I had to pay all of our licenses, and we haven't got to updating what it's going to cost to update and pay for all of our URLs, all our links. But I mean, at the beginning of the year, we're out about $17,000, and that's on our tools, our donation tool, because we have so many contacts now. Our licensing to run all of our websites, the tools to stream everything we do, our insurance. I mean, it's crazy what you have to pay as you get it. Because when we first started, we didn't have any of that.
Right.
But now it's everywhere from 15 to 20 grand a year that we pay for licensing and fees and everything else.
Yeah, and we share the same platform for fundraising, and that just keeps going up.
Yeah.
The cost in that, and that thing is a blessing because it allows us to do these crowdfunding. And Mike, it's the same way. We don't charge families anything when we do those crowdfunding. Now, there's a credit card processing fee, which is with anything.
But that's nothing that we control.
Right, but we're giving 100% of that to the family. I call it pass-through giving. So
it takes us 2 minutes to set up a link.
Yep.
So.
And we'd both be happy to do it for
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
And then, the tough thing about being in the nonprofit world is basically when it comes to cost categories, you have 3 buckets you can put it in: administrative, fundraising, or
Your
give back,
expense.
program or give back.
Yeah.
And so when people, oftentimes, and I know we're polar difference on how we're set up right now, but people ask what's your administrative cost, and ours is low right now because we're a startup and we don't have staff at the moment, but we could. But it's like, I can give you that breakdown, and look, I mean, we're 2% administrative, but you're going to be significantly higher. But you run gaming, and you need those people, and it's allowed you to quadruple what you've brought in, which means you've quadrupled what you've given, which people oftentimes miss. Is that, but the thing is, it's so limited in what you can share too, because I've got all kinds of costs that, like you're talking about.
It's insane.
I've got IT cost. Luckily, we've got a great partner that's our CPA, and she's phenomenal, and their group's phenomenal. So we've not had to pay anything for CPA work. And Baldwin CPA is great. And you've got a great CPA with Wendy, and she does my personal taxes. It takes a village, truly, to make these things happen, and they're expensive. And a lot of people say a lot of things without any knowledge of what truly goes on. And that knowledge that I gained from sitting on the board with Shirley's Way, I mean, I genuinely believe we wouldn't be this successful this early without that. People ask, like, how did you do it? I said, well, just learned. I was a sponge. Like, I learned everything, the good and the bad. You know, the bad, I was like, I won't let that happen because I've seen what it does. The good, I say, we're going to replicate that to the best of our ability. And a lot of people who aren't in the nonprofit world don't understand how tight-knit our community is when it comes to nonprofit, meaning the major corporations, they're competitive, they're cutthroat. We're not.
We work together.
Absolutely. And,
because we have the same mission. We want to help people in the community.
Right. Yeah. And it's families that we've helped, specifically the Kurt Gessners, the Trouts, like they've started foundations after this. They've started scholarship funds, and that's what we want. That means that's an extension to the help that we provided, now provides more help for others, and they're killing it. And it's phenomenal that they're able to do these things in honor of their angels too. But we've got the coalition with the 5 of us, the dollar up. We're changing the world $1 at a time. I mean, it's us coming together. That I know you've always had that dream, and we're all linked. All 5 of us are linked in some way or another anyway. And so we're raising money together, and it's such an incredible thing that. And we lean on each other, I text you. I text Daryl. I did a panel for Eddie the other day. And it's invaluable experience and a family that we've kind of created that helps us all do better, I think.
I'd love to see us all 5, 10 of us in the community pull together and have one huge event and just blow it out. And maybe, I don't know what it is, and have each one have a couple minutes to talk about what they do, but all of us work together and make it happen. Because I think the smaller organizations like ours can control this community, and people are going to realize when they give, it's actually touching people. I'm not opposed to people making money. You have to have good people, and you're going to have to eventually pay people. Yeah. Because you eventually hit a time where you're tapping the limits of your volunteers, because it gets to a point where they can't do everything.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I envision us all working together a lot stronger in the future. So
absolutely. And then to that point of the, we're going to continue to grow. You all are continuing to grow. And, there might be a time when I have to do this full time, or I might have to hire an executive director.
You will.
And the thing about it is, if you do this as your only job, Mike Mulrooney, you would double, triple, quadruple your earnings for the foundation. The thing is, you've built a professional career You've got a good salary. I know it.
Yeah.
You've worked hard for that and you earn it. I do as well. And it's tough to say I can pay myself the same salary doing what I do. But the reality is if Terry was to stop working and do this full time, I can guarantee what we raise will quadruple.
Oh, yeah. Because you've got the time to chase everything down that you don't now.
That's the thing.
I've got my phones going off right now, about 6 different people that probably want to get in contact with me, and I'm sure yours is doing the same thing. But just think about that. But, that's the misnomer that people that have never dealt with charities, they don't understand. It takes good people, and you have to take care of good people, or you're not going to have them.
Yeah. And you've got one of the best in Kelly.
I do. We got some of the best.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, before Kelly had that position, she talked to me about it because she was just getting out of college. She was wondering, she's passionate because you helped her family. And I knew her, and I'm like, you'd be great at this. And Mike can trust you, and I know the cause is close to your heart because it's personally touched you. And having her on your team is incredible. And fortunately, I've built a board and a coach here right now that's gotten us by, and me too. I mean, it's a second full-time job for me.
Right.
But it's what it takes to run. This is a business.
It is.
It's a full-fledged business. That basically my board and co-chair are my staff, and we have volunteers, and we put on 5-6 events a year, and we're helping people constantly. And I think that gets lost in the sauce is what I like to say is people don't like it. I'd love to have a camera follow me for a full day and just see, like, from the moment I wake up.
Said the same thing.
Yeah, I wake up, I help get the kids ready for school with my wife, and then check emails, and then jump in the car, drive to work if I'm going into the office, and then get to work. And, I work for a healthcare company that hired me a year ago this month, and knew that I ran the foundation. And that was part of my pitch to them because they were pursuing me. And I said, look, I run a foundation. I've got a family. This company, I work for Trilogy Healthcare, has an incredible culture. And that's what I want to work for. I want to go to work for someone that I believe in what you're doing. And they also believe in what I'm doing. And they've got their own foundation internally. And it's the greatest partnership. I have an incredible boss. The ownership is great, and they support what I do. And it's probably the same with Brown-Forman, right? You couldn't do this without that.
Yeah, they all know what I do, and they're pretty open to it. They know we're touching lives, but they also know that BF is first.
Yep.
And they know that I will do anything I can. Because they're first.
Exactly.
But they're also, I would think it would make the company look good to have employees so in tune to the community.
Yeah. And if that's your culture.
Yeah, that's what we are. But yeah, for sure. I'm very lucky with where I work as well. So
yeah. And again, I've never missed a deadline at Trilogy, and that's the thing. They can go, you know what, you're doing incredible work, but you're doing it here too. Mm-hmm. And so that's the good thing is I haven't lost a step there, but giving it all I got, everywhere I got. So,
well, amazing story, amazing work. We're a big fan of the foundation, and I'm sure we'll continue working together. But I think me and Eddie had talked about having a nonprofit day to come in here and talk about nonprofits, the things that we all think should change one day, and educate the public on what it is we do every day and why it's a problem, the way it's set up, and and just educate people on things that nonprofits, if things were changed, that we wouldn't have the limitations, because nonprofits, especially us, are doing things that our government cannot do for the community.
Right.
We're filling a void, and that's why it's a nonprofit. They're a little easier on you. You still got to pay a tax on stuff, but we're doing stuff that they can't figure out or don't have time to deal with. And that's exactly what we do.
Yep. And there's such a need for it, right? And it takes very driven people to do what we're doing, what Eddie's doing, what Daryl's doing, what Murph's doing, what Kurt Gessner's are doing. It takes a different type of person. And it means you either live something or you've got that burning in your heart to go fix something. And I naively want to make the world a better place, because ultimately when it's my time, I just want people to say he made the world a little better. I know I can't fix the world. There's too many problems, but I literally take every person that we come into contact as an opportunity to mend their heart a little bit, because they're a little broken when we're stepping in, and I'm trying to, Band-Aid it a little bit, and ultimately let them think, although the memory of their tragic moment is going to be bad because you lost someone, I want them to think of Leslie and Ryan as helping them get through it. Our foundation is helping them get through it. And we're a family foundation. We don't run this thing like a big corporation. We follow every guideline to the T, but we want you to feel like you're an extension of our family, because this foundation is an extension of our family. And once we help you, you're part of that. And I try to set reminders to touch base with people after we help them, because it's easy to step in, help, and move on. And we're going to get big enough where that's going to get harder. But I genuinely care about these people that we help, and I genuinely want them to come out of this, as best as they can. And that's what Leslie would want, and that's what Ryan wants. And so it just matters. And the government, there's so much red tape and there's so many biases, and I'm the least political person in the world.
I am too. I watch it all, but I can't stand it. It makes me sick to watch.
Yeah,
so.
and my beliefs, I'm registered Republican, but I view Democratic beliefs as some that are good, and I kind of sit in the middle. But if you're a middleman right now in politics, you don't have an opinion, and even if you did, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
they're
gonna run you out of town. So,
but that middle ground, like you and I kind of have, is how you change the world, and how you change people, and how you change hearts, and we're trying.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks so much. What's the website?
It's LRPFD. So Leslie Ryan Prather Foundation. The FD is a play off of the fire department. I know a lot of people wonder why I added a D to the end. Yeah. It's a play off of fire department, but also foundation. So.
Well, amazing story, amazing organization. Get out there, make some donations to help these folks change the lives in the community. And if you need some tax help with that, Miss Wendy Barker CPA, she does a phenomenal job. It's tax season, I guess, till another month or so. I guess they haven't extended that date. You're an accountant,
You can file an extension, but I'm going to see Wendy tonight at 8 o'clock.
See, somebody's already using her. So Wendy Barker CPA, check her out. She's CFO of Shirley's Way. Barker CPA, thanks so much, Terry, for coming in today. And I'm sure we'll have you back when Eddie and I start talking about nonprofits, because I think we could really open the eyes of people on how things are run and the way we think they should be run. And then we'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much.